It's a Tuesday evening, nothing unusual. You're driving home after a long day. Maybe you stopped for groceries. Maybe you stayed late at the office. You're tired. You're thinking about dinner. Your hands are at 10 and 2. Then you see it, blue and red in the rearview mirror. Your stomach drops immediately, even though you weren't speeding, even though you haven't done anything wrong. That's just what those lights do to the human body. Your heart rate climbs. Your palms get slightly damp. Your brain starts running through everything. Did I run a light? Is my registration current? Did I do something? You pull over. The officer approaches, window down, and before you've had a chance to think and before you've had a moment to collect yourself, then the officer says, "Go ahead and step out of the vehicle for me." And here is the moment that changes everything for most people. Most people get out, not because they were ordered by a court, not because they were under arrest, not because they fully understood their options in that moment. They get out because the officer sounded calm, because it sounded like a routine request, because they didn't want to seem difficult, because everything in their nervous system said, just cooperate, just be polite, just make this easy. And the moment they open that door, the legal landscape shifts entirely, because what looked like a simple traffic stop just became something else. A conversation that was protected inside the vehicle is now happening on the side of the road. Distance between driver and officer is now zero. The dynamic has changed. The body cam is running, and words are coming out of people's mouths that they cannot take back. Here's what most people never understand. Cooperating and complying are not the same thing. Being polite and being legally unprotected are not the same thing. And staying in your car is not defiance. It is one of the most important passive legal protections you have at a traffic stop. The question is not whether to respect law enforcement. The question is whether you know what to say and what not to say before you ever open that door. That's exactly what this video is about. In the next several minutes, I am going to walk you through the most critical moments in a roadside traffic stop, from the first question through the exit request, and I will give you the exact language to use in each one. Not vague legal theory, actual words, short phrases, calm statements you can use under pressure, phrases that protect you without escalating anything, without being rude, and without making the situation worse. We are going to cover 7 specific moments, 7 moves that happen in nearly every traffic stop, 7 situations where what you say or what you don't say determines the outcome of the entire encounter. By the end of this video, you will understand why police encounters follow a predictable pattern, what that pattern is designed to do, and how to navigate it with calm legal precision. I'm Marcus Hale. This channel exists for one reason: to give ordinary people access to the kind of legal awareness that used to belong only to people who could afford it or who were lucky enough to know an attorney personally. I'm not here to paint law enforcement as the enemy. That is not what this is. I'm here to make sure that when you're sitting on the side of the road at 9 p.m. with your hands on the steering wheel, you know exactly what you're doing. Let's start. The system behind the stop. Before we get into the specific moments, you need to understand something that most people don't. A traffic stop is not random improvisation. It is a structured interaction. It follows a pattern. And that pattern is designed, not maliciously, but systematically, to establish control, gather information, and create opportunities for further investigation. Officers are trained in how to conduct stops. They know what questions to ask. They know how people typically respond. They know what a nervous driver looks like versus a calm one. They are observing, recording, and assessing from the moment they approach your window. This doesn't make them villains. It makes them professionals doing a job. But here's what it means for you. If you don't understand what the system is doing, you will respond to it emotionally rather than strategically. You will answer questions you don't have to answer. You will consent to things you don't have to consent to. You will step out of the vehicle before you've said a single word to protect yourself legally. The officer may be doing several things simultaneously, establishing psychological dominance and control of the interaction, testing your level of nervousness or inconsistency, building a timeline through casual questions, looking for contradictions between your answers, creating verbal consent to things you don't realize you're agreeing to, generating statements on body cam that can be used later, manufacturing what courts call reasonable suspicion for further investigation. None of this is hidden. It is simply how trained law enforcement operates. Once you understand the structure, you stop being reactive. You become calm. You know what's coming. You know what to say and what to stay silent about, and that changes everything. Here are the 7 moments that matter most. Part 1, The guilt anchor. The officer's line. Do you know why I stopped you today? It sounds like a simple question. It sounds conversational, almost friendly. Most people interpret it as an invitation to confirm that they understand what happened, and most people immediately answer it. I think I was going a little fast. Maybe a rolling stop back there. My registration, is that what it is? Think about what just happened. You just confessed. Without being charged, without being questioned under Miranda, without an attorney present. You guessed at the reason for your stop, and in doing so, handed the officer an admission on a silver platter. Here is what that question is actually doing. It is a technique for obtaining a voluntary statement. The officer already knows why they stopped you. This question is not about information gathering for their benefit. It is an invitation for you to speak, to speculate, and to possibly say something incriminating before the encounter has even formally begun. Psychologically, this works because most people, especially when nervous, have a powerful urge to show that they understand, that they're reasonable, that they're cooperating. We feel that silence to a direct question is rude, so we fill it. And in filling it, we often confirm or create the very evidence that works against us. The legal principle here is straightforward. In general, you are not required to answer questions at a traffic stop beyond identifying yourself in states that require identification. Volunteering incriminating information, however, can be used against you. The Fifth Amendment protects you from being compelled to be a witness against yourself, but it does not protect you from voluntarily doing exactly that. The phrase you say, "I'd rather not speculate, officer," that's it. Calm, polite, non-combative, 6 words. You are not refusing to cooperate. You are not being hostile. You are simply declining to guess, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. Let the officer tell you why they stopped you. That's their job. Say it with a neutral tone. No attitude, no sigh, no eye roll, just calm and even. "I'd rather not speculate, officer." What not to say, "I think maybe," or "was it the," or "I was just." Do not guess. Do not offer theories. Do not try to head it off by confessing early. The mistake most people make here costs them before the encounter even begins. The stop isn't over. It's just starting. And this is where the next move begins. Part 2. The paperwork pause. The scenario: the officer asks for your license, registration, and proof of insurance. This seems completely routine. It is routine, but what happens in the next 60 to 90 seconds is not routine at all for most drivers, because while they are digging through the glove box, looking nervous, making unnecessary comments, the officer is watching every single movement and listening to everything being said. This is the observation window. The officer is standing at your window or slightly behind it, watching your hands, watching your eyes, watching how you interact with your passenger if you have one, watching whether you seem rehearsed or panicked. They are building a first impression that will shape everything that follows. Most people talk too much during this phase. They narrate their own movements. "It's in here somewhere. Sorry, I just cleaned this out." They volunteer information. "I'm coming from my friend's place. We were just hanging out." They apologize without cause. "Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I don't usually get pulled over." Every one of those statements is information, unnecessary information, information you gave willingly. The Fifth Amendment principle applies here too, but the more practical issue is that nervous, disorganized behavior and unsolicited statements can contribute to what an officer might describe as indicators of impairment or suspicion in their report. The phrase you say, "Here are my documents. Am I free to go?" Hand over your license, registration, and insurance. Then ask the question calmly, directly, not aggressively. Just, "Here are my documents. Am I free to go?" This phrase does 2 things simultaneously. It completes your legal obligations, handing over the documents, and it begins establishing whether this is a brief detention or something else. You are not causing a scene. You are asking a completely legitimate question. Do not apologize for being nervous. Do not explain where you've been. Do not comment on your own behavior. Hand the documents, ask the question, then stop talking. The mistake most people make is using this phase as a social moment. The officer is not your friend right now. They are doing a job. You can be courteous without being conversational, because once those documents go back to the patrol car, the next phase begins, and that is where most people get truly caught off guard. Part 3, the destination interrogation. The officer's line, "So, where are you headed tonight? Or where are you coming from? This sounds like small talk. It sounds like the officer is just filling silence while your information runs through the system. And that is exactly what it is designed to sound like. It is not small talk. Where you are going and where you are coming from are investigative questions. Your answer creates a timeline. Your answer can be checked for consistency. If you say you're coming from a specific place and there's surveillance footage or a witness that contradicts you, you now have a credibility problem. If you mention a location or a person that is of interest to law enforcement for any reason, you have just provided a link. If you say one thing here and something different later in the encounter, that inconsistency becomes a flag. More broadly, these questions help the officer assess whether your story has what they're looking for or doesn't. They're not just asking where you've been. They're watching how you answer, how long it takes, whether you hesitate, whether your answer feels rehearsed or natural, how many details you volunteer. The psychological mechanism here is powerful. Most people feel that declining to answer a friendly conversational question will make them look suspicious. They think, what kind of person doesn't just say where they're going? That's weird. That'll make this worse. That instinct works against them every time. In general, you are not legally required to answer investigative questions about your activities, your destination, or your companions during a traffic stop. The stop is for a specific purpose, a traffic violation or infraction. Questions about your whereabouts are a different matter. The phrase you say, I prefer to keep that private, officer. 7 words, calm, not rude, not aggressive, just clear. You are not concealing anything. You are not being defiant. You are simply exercising a basic privacy principle, one that every person has and one that does not require an explanation or an apology. Say it once. Do not expand on it. Do not offer an alternative answer. Do not say, I'm not doing anything wrong. Because that immediately signals defensiveness. Just, I prefer to keep that private, officer. Then stop talking. The mistake most people make is feeling that they need to justify their silence. You don't. Silence and privacy are not suspicious. They're constitutional. And now we come to the moment most people fear the most. Part 4, the consent request, the officer's line. Mind if I take a quick look in your vehicle, or you don't have anything in there I should know about, do you? Pay very close attention to this one. This question, do you mind if I take a look, is perhaps the single most consequential moment in a traffic stop. Because if you say yes, or if you say sure, go ahead, or even if you hesitate and then say I guess, you have just consented to a search, and consent is one of the primary exceptions to the warrant requirement under the Fourth Amendment. Let me be very clear about what that means. The officer does not have a warrant. They may not have probable cause, but if you give consent, none of that matters. You've waived those protections voluntarily. Anything found in that vehicle is now fair game, and courts have consistently upheld voluntary consent searches even when the person consenting didn't fully understand their right to refuse. The second version of this question, you don't have anything in there I should know about, do you? Is even more insidious because it's phrased as a challenge to your innocence. If you say no, you've just made an implicit invitation. If you say, nothing major, that's a problem. If you get defensive, that reads as suspicious. The question is engineered to be difficult to answer neutrally. Psychologically, this works because most innocent people want to prove they have nothing to hide. The fastest way to prove that in their mind is to agree to the search. Let the officer look. Show them there's nothing there. Then this will be over. But here's the truth. A search that finds nothing still took your time, your privacy, and your dignity. And a search that finds something, even something minor, can have serious consequences. The consent you gave cannot be unwound. The phrase you say, I don't consent to searches, officer. 6 words, delivered calmly, once, not loudly, not with hostility. This is a complete sentence. It is your legal position, and it is fully within your rights in virtually every jurisdiction in the United States. You do not explain why. You do not say, it's not that I have anything to hide. It's just because once you start that sentence, you've opened a conversation. You do not say no offense. You do not apologize. You do not qualify it. I don't consent to searches, officer. If the officer says, why not? The answer is, that's my right, officer. If they say, if you've got nothing to hide, the answer is still, I don't consent to searches. You say it once, you say it calmly, you say it clearly, and then you say nothing further on the subject. What not to say? I'd rather you didn't. Too weak. I don't think so. Ambiguous. Can you do that? Irrelevant question that shifts the power. Just state your position clearly. The mistake most people make is treating consent like a social formality. It isn't. It is a legal decision with lasting consequences. Don't let discomfort in the moment override your rights. Before we continue, if you know someone who drives at night, commutes frequently, or has never known what to say at a traffic stop, share this video with them right now. This is the kind of information people need before they need it, not after. Send it before the moment comes. Part 5, the exit demand, the officer's line. Go ahead and step out of the vehicle for me. This is the moment the video title is about, and it is the most misunderstood moment in a traffic stop. Most people hear this and immediately comply. They put the car in park. If it isn't already, open the door and stand outside because it sounded like a polite request because the officer said, "For me," which makes it sound personal, almost friendly, because they don't know they have anything to say first. Here is what you need to understand. Under Pennsylvania versus Mims, 1977, and Maryland versus Wilson, 1997, officers do have the authority, once a lawful stop has been initiated, to ask both the driver and passengers to exit the vehicle. That is established law. This isn't a trick designed to deceive you about your rights. But here is what matters. There is a significant difference between being legally required to exit and exiting without establishing anything on the record first. When you are inside the vehicle, you are in a protected space. The moment you exit, your proximity to the officer changes, the body cam footage changes, and the nature of the interaction physically changes. More importantly, once you are standing outside that vehicle, the encounter often escalates, additional observations are made, more questions are asked, and the situation develops in ways it would not have if you had taken 30 seconds to establish something important first. You should say something before you open that door, not to refuse, not to argue, but to create a clear, calm statement on the record. The phrase you say, "Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? I am complying under protest." Say it calmly, say it clearly, then comply if instructed to exit. This phrase does something critical. It creates a verbal record. It establishes that your compliance was not voluntary enthusiasm. It was compliance under authority. It asks the question that must be answered, and it does not escalate the situation. Am I being detained or am I free to go? Is one of the most legally significant questions you can ask at any stop, because the officer must tell you either you are being detained, in which case the standard for detention must be met, or you are free to go, in which case you should calmly leave. "I am complying under protest" signals that your exit from the vehicle is not consent to further search, not an expression of comfort with the situation, and not a waiver of any right. It is on the record. It matters. Say this before you open the door, not after you're already standing outside, not as an afterthought before. What not to say? "I don't want to get out." That's resistance. "You can't make me." That's escalation. "Fine, whatever." That's emotional, and it reads as either guilty or confrontational on body cam. None of those help you. The mistake most people make is that they exit first and think second. By then, the conversational dynamic has changed, they're more physically exposed, and the officer's next move is already in motion. Say the phrase, then comply, then stay calm. Part 6, the roadside interview. The scenario. You are now outside the vehicle. The officer wants to talk. They want to know more. The questions continue. Your history, your destinations, your relationship to the vehicle, whether you've ever been arrested, whether there are any weapons, any drugs, anything the officer should know. This phase is the most psychologically demanding of the entire stop. You are standing on the side of the road, possibly in the dark, possibly in traffic. You are physically exposed. The officer is between you and your vehicle. There may be a second unit pulling up. You are not in a comfortable environment. And in that discomfort, the words start coming out. Most people, even people who know their rights intellectually, cave here, because standing outside your car under the lights of a patrol vehicle with a uniformed officer asking you direct questions feels completely different from reading about it. Here is what this phase is designed to do. It creates a relaxed conversational interrogation without triggering Miranda protections because you are not under formal arrest. You are just talking. And people who are just talking say things. They contradict themselves. They volunteer connections. They answer questions that had nothing to do with the original traffic stop. There is a general legal principle that statements made voluntarily and without coercion during a traffic encounter can be used as evidence. You are not in custody. Miranda does not apply, and everything you say is being recorded. The phrase you say, "I'd like to remain silent, and I'd like an attorney if this becomes a formal investigation." This phrase is clear, complete, and legally grounded. You are invoking two constitutional protections, the right to remain silent and the right to counsel, in calm, plain language. You are not panicking. You are not fleeing. You are simply drawing the legal line. Some people worry that saying this makes them look guilty. It does not. Courts have recognized the invocation of rights as legally significant, not as evidence of guilt. And any attorney will tell you the number of cases that have been made worse by people talking is vastly greater than the number that have been helped by it. You say this calmly. You do not repeat it over and over. You say it once, then you stop talking. If the officer continues to ask questions, you do not answer. You have already stated your position, what not to say. Anything else about the investigation, anything that seems to explain your silence, anything that reopens the door to a conversation. Once you've said it, stay quiet. The mistake most people make is thinking that silence is somehow suspicious or that invoking rights is confrontational. It is neither. It is the most sophisticated, legally protective thing a person can do in this moment. And it brings us to the last and most important part. The pressure moment. The officer's line, "Look, if you just cooperate with me right now, this gets a lot easier for everyone. But if you want to make this difficult," this is the pressure statement, and it is the moment when everything you've done up to now gets tested. The officer's tone may have shifted. What was calm is now slightly edged. The implication is clear. Cooperate fully or things escalate. This often comes after you've invoked your rights or declined to answer questions. It's designed to make you feel that your protection has created a problem. Let's be honest about what this is psychologically. It is leverage. It is an appeal to your fear of escalation. It is designed to make the path of silence feel more costly than the path of talking. And for most people, it works because nobody wants more trouble. Nobody wants to be arrested. Nobody wants a minor traffic stop to become a major incident. So they start talking, they start explaining, they start trying to smooth things over, and in doing so, they hand over everything the officer was looking for. Here's the legal reality. Invoking your constitutional rights is not making things difficult. It is the exercise of protections that exist precisely for this moment. The discomfort of an officer is not a legal standard. An officer's displeasure is not probable cause, and your desire to be cooperative does not require you to waive protections designed to keep innocent people safe. The phrase you say, "I am being respectful, officer. I am not trying to make this difficult. I am simply exercising my rights." Say it calmly, without challenge, without sarcasm, with complete composure. This phrase accomplishes something important. It reframes the narrative. You are not the problem. You are a calm, respectful person who knows their rights and is exercising them clearly. That is on the body cam. That is on the record. If anything happens next, if the stop escalates, if there is a legal dispute, if this ends up in front of a judge, what is on that body cam matters enormously. And what you want on that body cam is this: a calm, respectful person saying clearly and without hostility that they are exercising their rights. That is protection. That is your voice on the record. What not to say: "You can't just do this." That's argument. "I know my rights." That's often delivered in a tone that escalates rather than de-escalates. This is ridiculous. That's emotional and it works against you. Calm, respectful, clear, one time. The mistake most people make is letting the officer's frustration become their frustration. The moment you match the emotional temperature of the situation, you've lost control of how you are perceived. Stay controlled. Stay composed, because that composure in that moment on that camera is the last and most durable protection you have. The memory block. Write this down, save this video, say these phrases out loud before you ever need them. At the first question, "I'd rather not speculate, officer." When handing over documents, Here are my documents. Am I free to go? When asked about your destination, I prefer to keep that private, officer. When asked to consent to a search, I don't consent to searches, officer. When asked to exit the vehicle, officer, am I being detained or am I free to go? I am complying under protest. During roadside questioning, I'd like to remain silent and I'd like an attorney if this becomes a formal investigation. Under pressure, I am being respectful, officer. I am not trying to make this difficult. I am simply exercising my rights. 7 phrases, 7 moments, 7 protections. None of them are hostile. None of them are illegal. All of them are yours to use. Say them now, out loud, before you ever see those lights in your rearview mirror. Because the time to practice is not when your hands are shaking and your heart is pounding. It's now, in this moment. With a clear head, I'm Marcus Hale. I'll see you in the next one.